Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Creo que tenemos una cuenta atrás ahí, yo creo.
Perfect. Good afternoon. First time in my case that I'm in a silent conference. I've been in silent disco a while ago, but the experience is kind of different. So hope you can really enjoy this session. So we will talk about how to use a customer data platform to transform how you are operating with data. So, but I would like to start answering a question. Why a CDP is important? Why a customer data platform is important nowadays? Because we are building a future, so what does it mean, CDP with the future? So CDPs are a solution that are here to really consolidate all the data from your customer and having a unified single view of them. But why this is needed today? So the answer is quite straightforward, I would say. First of all, the consumers are demanding one-to-one experiences. They would like to really, the companies they work with, they understand them, they understand their needs, their preferences, and so on. But at the same time, those preferences are dynamic in the time. If I ask you, if you are the same person today that you were 3 years ago, probably the answer is no. We are a little bit different. Probably our preferences, our habits have changed, especially during the pandemic times. So also talking about the future is also about innovation. Future is also part of artificial intelligence. And this morning, I was thinking about how to open this session and how to introduce Nico. And I said, okay, let's try to ask a question to Chat GPT. And I asked the question about why a CDP is important nowadays. And the answer, I will read it for you. It was, a customer data platform is needed in today's digital age as it helps businesses to collect, analyze, and utilize customer data to personalize marketing efforts, improve customer engagement, and drive sales. It allows for a centralized and unified view of customer data, enabling businesses to make data-driven decisions and improve the customer experience. So again, another proof about the future, the importance of the artificial intelligence, and if I need to write why a CDP is important nowadays in such a short sentence, probably I won't be able to do it as precise and concrete as the artificial intelligence has done for me today. So let me introduce our guest, who is Nico Lozano, who works in Prisa Group, and he will be running the session and explain to us how they are using the CDP platform to operate and to run their data transformation within Prisa Group. So, Nico, first of all, thank you so much for being here, for being with us. And I would like you to provide to the audience an overview about what Prisa Group is, that probably they know some of the brands, but probably some of them are well known. So if you can explain the diversity of your business.
Great. So thank you for inviting me here. Nico, I'm the Data Strategy Director within Prisa Group. As Carlos was mentioning, we are one of the biggest publishing media groups in Spanish content. And if we look at our numbers, they are super big in terms of audience. Our reach in terms of monthly users in our digital assets is around 230 million or plus. And that means that the content that we write, the content, the audio that we produce, and the video that we publish are read across all the globe. In the Spanish market, we're one of the biggest publishing groups, but as well in LATAM. So as I was mentioning, I'm the data strategy lead, and you can imagine that these numbers that you're seeing in this slide are quite big, and that means that we have a lot of data to play around, and that's part of the history and the story that we are going to talk to you about today, how we have used all of this data to power transformation within a publishing group. So in terms of our brands, probably you will know some of these. So if we look at what type of content we produce, it's both audio and press. So we come from a long tradition of printed paper as well as radio FM. We have made the transition into digital, so moving into the digital news as well as digital radio podcasting. And these are the three types of contents that we produce.
Good, good. Thanks for the introduction, Nico. One question. We are at Building the Future. Mm-hmm. What does building the future means for a group like Prisa?
So the future, I'm not sure what is going to, where it's going to take us, but in terms of where we are, what we are seeing, something that we are taking into account for our next step is the context where we are playing. So if we think about the industry who we are competing against, we are now in the economy of in the attention economy. So at the end, the content that we produce is valuable as long as people is consuming that content. So you know that now we have new big players producing content globally, and we have platforms like Google, TikTok, Meta competing against us for that attention. So from the Prisa side, we need to make sure that we keep producing the numbers that I was showing before. We also need to think about how we treat data. So over the last months and years, we have seen that in terms of the industry and the population, there is more awareness about what companies are doing with the data. And in the case of publisher groups, that is super relevant because the reach that we have. So we now have to make sure that in terms of how we manage data, we keep that transparency and we keep within the boundaries of the regulation. And also if we think about Prisa, so previously I was talking about the type of content that we produce, both audio and news, but the change in which there is an umbrella covering both worlds is new, and that's opening new opportunities for us because we can mix the experiences that we are building for our users, because we can put together audio content with news, and that means that we have the capability of moving loyal customers to one of our brands like El País in terms of news into radio FM, where they can continue their experience through audio. So the context is challenging as well as there is a big opportunity for us, and that's why for the future and what we are doing in terms of the future is using the data to power an internal transformation. Previously I was talking and saying that in terms of our tradition, we used to print paper and produce radio FM. We moved into digital. That was one step of our transformation. But what we are doing now is building a data ecosystem. And the framework that we are using to build this data ecosystem is called Prisa ID. The Prisa ID is a portfolio of data services that we are giving to our business units for them to make sure that in terms of growing their KPIs, they have the tools and the resources to power them internally. So if we think about what is inside of the Prisa ID, we have these 4 pillars, and this is what we are building internally. The first step is to make sure that we have one place with all of our user data information, so we can know if someone is engaging with more than one brand and what type of content and what is the frequency and the recurrency of their content consumption. We also have an identity graph. So if we think about how to build personalized experiences and how to use data to power those personalized experiences, recognizing who you are speaking with, who is listening to you, it's an important part. So that identity graph gives us the possibility of joining the different user IDs to make sure that we recognize that a person that is engaging with our content. And the other 2 pillars that you can see over there are what our business units are capable of doing with the data. So they can personalize the content and build personalized experiences, but also they can use this to move the needle in terms of our more monetary goals. So if we think about Prisa as a business, what make us successful are these three pillars that you can see over here. So the first one is our digital products. If we have more users engaging with us, they spend more time and they are willing to give us more information to build those personalized experiences, there are teams that will be successful because of that, the teams producing the content. We have marketing teams, which their goals, it's more focused on paid subscription programs, like the one that we have with El País, or building and bringing events through the content that we are producing. And then we have the monetization, which is linked to the ads revenue, right? So we have to make sure that we are giving the data capabilities to the teams selling the ad spaces and monetizing our data directly with agencies and advertisers. And the goal of the Prisa ID at the end is to give a portfolio of data services to each of these teams.
Okay, so, well, really interesting, amazing project. Challenging at the same time. Seems simple when you show it in a slide, but I'm pretty sure that the complexity is behind the scenes. But I first started the presentation saying that we are going to talk about CDPs and the importance of the CDPs in today's landscape. How Adobe Real-Time CDP plays a role in your strategy, in your Prisa ID project?
Right. It's a deep question, and for a deep question, we need a complex slide. Don't get scared with it. It's a representation of the implementation that we have done with the CDP that we are introducing in the solution. So Adobe Experience Platform is the CDP solution that we have implemented. And if we think about the portfolio of data services that I was talking about with the Prisa ID, we need that unified user view in one place, as well as an identity graph and the mechanisms to change the experience and to connect and share our data with other platforms. So that for us is the CDP. It's the place where we are putting all of our user data, the IDs associated with those users. What we are doing is building segments inside the solution and sharing those segments with other technologies that we have in the stack. So the Prisa ID it's a combination of multiple technologies. The CDP is probably at the core of that setup. And what you can see in this architecture is the data that we're putting inside Adobe Experience Platform. So if you think about Prisa as a group, at the end, most of the majority of the engagement that we have from our users is coming from websites and apps and smart speakers. So what we do is Adobe Experience Platform is collecting all the interactions that we are having from those channels. So there is an event flowing from the website or the app into the CDP solution. We are tracking alongside that things like a cookie or a mobile identifier or a register ID, and that is helping us build that unified view in real time. If you think about us, we have other data sources. That's why this slide is a little bit messy. So for our paid subscription, we have a platform called Evolog, which is kind of our e-commerce. And from there, what we are doing is taking the things like the purchase event or the view of what products and services someone has contracted for us, and we are pushing that master information into Adobe Experience Platform. So at the end, the goal of all of these arrows and boxes is to make sure that at the center, we have that unified view of the user together with the different IDs coming from the platforms. So if I get an email, I get a telephone number, or I get a cookie, I can recognize that it's the same user that is interacting with all of our different brands. The very important aspect here, when we were thinking about moving into a CDP project, is the combination of our data cloud environment and the CDP. Because in our data cloud environment, we also have a unified view of the consumer. But we thought that there was a space for these two platforms, because in the data cloud environment, that in our case is sitting in Google Cloud Platform, what we are doing is building our analytical capabilities together with the data distribution capabilities. And in Adobe Experience Platform, what we are doing is the operational part. So if we want to build experiences and we want to transform how the content that we are pushing and showing to those users, it's being shown, that's the real-time aspect of AEP that is helping us, as well as the catalog of sources and destinations that is available. So this part shows the data in, but you also have the data out aspect. So if we think about a media group, when I was saying that we collect data from webs and apps, that's also the place mostly where we have our interactions. So we have Adobe Target in this case, which is helping us personalize the content. And the role of the CDP there is that we build user segments inside the CDP, and we have user trace, and those are passed into Adobe Target, so we can select which content is present to which segment, but also we can say, hey, Nico, this is the content for you. So we get those user trace, and those are passed into the personalization tool. And this is not only applicable for webs and apps, we also have our newsletters and our email content. So Adobe Experience Platform is connected with our marketing automation tool, which is Adobe Campaign. And also we are expanding this for every single interaction that we have. So if you think about a paid subscription program, there is a call center associated with that, the support and the dynamics for retaining users. So these CDP is connected as well with the call center, so they can know all the information linked to that user, as well as which segments are associated with that, and what is the next best action for that user. And I think that more or less that's what we are doing. The other aspect with the data cloud environment is that you can see that we are pushing information there, and this relates to what Carlos was mentioning. No? Are you the same person today that you were 3 or 4 months ago? Probably not. So what we are doing with the CDP is, as we have the real-time vision of the users, what we are doing is capturing a snapshot of that user on a daily basis and passing that into our data cloud environment, so we can know all the changes from an analytical aspect of our portfolio of users. And that helps us understand how the preferences, categories, and the trends within our users are moving across time.
Really, really interesting, Nico. One last question that I do have. I've seen in your presentation that one of your strategic pillars is to monetize your audiences, despite they are unknown users, subscribers, known users. Considering what is happening right now with the third-party cookies world and the deprecation that we are about to suffer, does the Adobe platform plays an active role on helping you to sort out this challenge?
The answer is yes. And we started the CDP project 7 months ago. So we launched an RFP at the beginning of 2022. And when we were launching the RFP, we were thinking about the approach to apply into the RFP. Because if we think about the 2022 project that we did, 2 of our main goals were to replace one of the technologies that was monetizing our data, which was a DMP solution, and a CRM solution. So when we were capturing all the details and our requirements, the data monetization aspect and how we were going to use this data for our advertisers and agencies was incorporated over there. So the answer to your question is yes, but I will go even one step further. So if you think about Prisa, we produce content, and that content is shown both in our digital assets, but also in external assets. And if we think, for example, in our audio world, almost 50% of our audio content is heard and listened outside of our own asset. That means that you can listen to our podcast in platforms like Spotify, or connecting to our streams through TuneIn. And the aspect of partnerships and connections is really relevant here, because we are not just thinking about the environment that we are building from a first-party perspective, but also in building and creating the different bridges to make sure that we can get data from other players and push our data into our collaborators. So if you go now and create an account and log in into one of our brands, what you will see is that you can use a social login to interact with us. And that social logins is not only facilitating the sign-in process, it's also giving us access to get the data from other resources. And that is great because we can get affinities and the tastes of our users, but also it's going to help us build a different type of experiences. And I was talking with Carlos before and giving him an example. Imagine that you are listening to a Prisa podcast inside Spotify, and you have our app installed in your device. Wouldn't it be nice if you can continue listening to the same audio in a seamless experience crossing Spotify and our app? And that's where we are going. We want to make sure that we build the connections to be able to create experiences across environments, not just a Prisa environment. So that's in terms of data imports, let's say, into the architecture. But also, we are building this with a vision of being able to share data with the outside world. And that is where things like a data clean room plays a role. And inside the CDP of Adobe, there is a functionality called segment match, which basically allows us to share segments with other Adobe Experience Platform customers. And for us, that is really relevant because something that we were doing with a DMP, for example, was using our segments to impact the campaigns of our advertisers. And now with this segment match functionality, what we will be able to do is help them understand better what is the overlap between their audiences and our audiences, and also help them redefine and rediscover their buyer persona within our environment. And we are doing that not using cookies, so that is preparing us for a cookie-less world. That is one bit. And the other bit is that if you think about the ID ecosystem, previously I was talking about how Adobe Experience Platform is helping us building a first-party identity graph. That identity graph is connected with our user identity system. So again, if you go into one of our brands and create an account, there is a service that manages that account, and it's a unique account for all of our brands. So once we have an email and a password for one user, you can go into El País, Los 40, Cadena Ser, and use that same email and password to log in. That has helped us a lot to build that unified view of the consumer. But also, it brings us the potential of having a good reach for a cookie-less world, because there are a lot of identity partners, and there are players in the market like LiveRamp, SEOTAP, ID5, that what they are doing for a cookie-less world is building an ID network. And to pass IDs into that network, basically we are using emails and telephone numbers in a hash way to be passed into into those networks. And Adobe Experience Platform, the CDP, is helping us in that process, because once the IDs are passed into the identity graph, we don't have to manage the burden of doing the transformation and the hashing for each of the networks. We are using that first-party identity graph to connect into the outside ID networks, so we keep relevant in a cookie-less world. So it's quite sophisticated and detailed. At the end, if you think about where we are going, there is a big debate in the industry around that change. If moving from third-party cookies into PII hash of PII data, if it's better or not. But for us, in terms of test and learn strategy, that's what we are doing, is connecting AEP with the different ID networks and seeing if for a cookieless world that is working or not.
Okay, really interesting. Thank you so much, Nico, for sharing your experience with us and with all the audience. There are few takeaways that I can get. First of all is the importance of having this simplified and unified view of your customers, having this, especially on a multi-brand environment, which is your case, having this all connected and understanding the interactions that they are doing in some of the brands, in some of the channels, despite there are first-party or even third-party channels, and how you can enrich the customer profile to at the end do better personalization that translate to a better customer experience, and then improve the KPIs, the conversion rates that you are looking for, the subscription rate, or even the upsell and cross-sell on the existing subscriber. So thank you so much, really, for sharing this. And if you are interested into...
Yeah. And there is an aspect over there that we haven't touched, which is the organizational change. So just thinking about a project like this in a media group for using all of this big portfolio of data services, there is a big cultural change that needs to happen. And that's where having partners like Adobe supporting us with sessions to explain how the platform is used, what type of use cases can manage and produce that change in terms of KPIs is really relevant.
Yep, fully agree. It's a whole holistic view. It's not only the technology, it's also what you do with the technology and how you do with the technology. Yes. So if you are interested into learning more about customer experience, other use cases, we will be right over there on the Adobe booth. So happy to see you later. Thank you very much.
All right.